What if the city you live in could understand you better? The promise of the smart city is to use data and AI to create cleaner, more efficient, and more livable urban spaces. But as we build this data-driven future, who gets left behind? Welcome to the Anaya Algorithm, the podcast for leaders who want to build the future intentionally. I'm your host, Magdalene Amegashti. Today, we are exploring the human side of smart cities with our guest, Harpal Matu. Harpal is an expert in the social science and data-driven decisions that shape our urban environment. And he's here to talk about the critical challenge of digital inclusion. In this episode, we discuss how to use data to serve people, the risk of creating a digital divide, and the urgent need for governance to safeguard our most vulnerable citizens in an AI-powered world. Please join me in welcoming Harpal Matu.
Thank you, Magdalena. That's a great introduction, and I'm proud to be here, actually. So I'm going to put my caveats out there. I've not done many podcasts. Actually, no, it's my first podcast, but this is quite an exciting experience for me. So to the listeners out there, please do forgive me if I do make some mistakes on this, but I'm sure I won't. So
I'm sure you would. So, Harpal, with your deep expertise in the social science and data-driven reality of smart cities, you bring a vital human perspective to a very technical topic. So thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the Anaya Algorithm.
Thank you. So just on that, look, I am a technologist to a point. So I see things from a technology perspective, technology first. But the ethos that we've always worked with when we developed Agilix is our sort of tech services business. Universe is our tech, I'm going to say our platform that we're working more towards solving some real sort of point problems within municipalities across the globe. But also it lends itself quite well towards smart cities and data. But what we've always been sort of clear on in between myself and my partners and the rest of our organization that we're a people first organization. We build technology to empower people, be that employees, be that citizens. And we'd really like to look into the lens of our users and what users are trying to get out of it and get technology to be an enabler. And that's kind of, working at it from that lens, you start to see things as slightly differently than you would if you were technology versus. Hopefully that makes sense.
It absolutely does. Did you want to do a quick intro just to help our audience?
Yeah, happy to. So a bit about me. So I've been in the technology space for technology transformation programs for most of my career. I'm a qualified accountant. And I started off really from a perspective of implementing ERP solutions. And that sort of lent itself quite well towards working in the ERP space within public sector and government spaces. So to give you some examples, I worked on a led-on transformation program to revolutionize the way Grant Thornton done a lot of their billing. Then I worked on a transformation program at House of Commons for quite a number of years, sort of vis-a-vis the whole sort of the expenses scandal that sort of blew up many years ago. That was actually at the House of Commons when that actually happened. So from a technology transformation perspective, digital transformation program or digital transformation perspective, I'd like to say I was at the early days of sort of digital transformation 1.0, where organizations were getting to a space of having one single platform to understand their finance needs, understand their HR needs, understanding sort of payroll needs, and getting to a point of actually using sort of very primitive IoTs, if you like, and nobody they are right now. So, and then you kind of get to a position of you started to gather lots of data or lots of information. So the first bit was actually getting the data. And I think that's where we sort of first came in. Now you've got all this rich data. What do you do with it? And this is where the data science is and all this other thing. This is where the whole thing of, data-driven decisions or data-driven networks really come into play now, which is where I see digital transformation 2.0 in the sort of grand scheme of things.
Awesome. I love how you called it digital transformation 1.0 and 2.0. It sets good clarity. So thank you. And let's start by defining our terms. So the phrase smart city.
Yep.
is everywhere, but it often brings to mind just sensors and efficiency.
Yep.
From your perspective, what is a smart city really about, and what is the human promise at its core?
This is a great thing. So I've been privileged to let's say sort of look at smart cities and sort of see them in action. So if you think of, I was on a delegation about a year ago. We went to Shenzhen in China, which I think is probably in terms of smart cities, in terms of kind of what the future could look like, it's probably up there in terms of everything you'd imagine. So deliveries by drone, for argument's sake, subway trains turning up as soon as the citizen arrives, digital empowerment where people, everything. There's a sort of a series of sort of platform apps called WeChat, and within China, that sort of everything is organized via that. So in that respect, you know, digital empowerment, engagement is quite big in those areas. That sort of lends itself to what is known as smart cities, and that's sort of digital empowerment for citizens using technology to for deliveries, and we talk about drones and other things, and that kind of works. But the thing I found that was missing from there, it's that was smart city from a perspective of using technology. Yes, data is obviously driven there, but I think that's from a world that we live in on this side of the world. And I think about the social sciences and social aspects of sort of digital data. I still feel there's something missing. So in other words, digital for me isn't about empowering everybody with apps and smartphones. It is actually using the data to make decisions on behalf of people, make better informed decisions on behalf of citizens,
Yeah.
and getting better citizen outcomes. So I use an example right now. My wife works in social care in the UK, with a very, I won't mention who the authority is, but it's a very significant authority in the UK. So one of the big challenges they have right now is around foster care and adoption. But the amount of times, she's there on a Friday afternoon where she's getting a panic phone call because a child is in foster care and they don't have another foster sort of home to take them to. You sort of have to question, how do you get to that position? The data is predictable, the outcome is predictable. So, why are our sort of foster caring solutions having to rely on emergency needs every single time? Albeit it's not smart cities and stuff, but it's data driven decisions. And if you don't get that right, we're a world from drones and sort of drone deliveries. There's a stage we've got to get fixed before that. Otherwise, we have a danger of leaving people behind.
I love that. I love that definition. It reframes the goal from creating a smart city to creating a more livable city for its people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And look,
Yeah.
cities will only get wider. We've got to go think of the big sort of metropolitan cities within the UK, but that's going across Europe. I'm off to India next month to visit some of the big sort of mega cities over there. So there is an attraction to cities, a bigger attraction to cities than ever before, especially as people, as the next generation sort of going more towards, I'm going to say, tech careers. The cities need to be in a better position to serve those citizens efficiently, and effectively.
Nice. Love that. And you talk about making better decisions for people based on people. So,
Yep.
can you give us a real world example of how a city has used data to make a tangible positive impact on its citizens' lives, particularly in a way that promotes inclusion?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I take the view of some of the things in China that I saw recently in terms of the data that was used towards health conditions and health outcomes. So, for argument's sake, they seem to be using data towards sort of preventative or sort of early diagnosis of sort of issues. A lot of it's wearables, for instance. Um, and you see that sort of in a lot of the elderly community in China. And that's great. But I think the problem we have is with the problem we have in the UK right now is from a citizen perspective, we struggle to have a single view of the citizen, which makes it very difficult for our authorities to sort of serve those citizens. So for example, we have NHS data, we have sort of, local authority data on various points of data. So the last time we count, I think there's about 8 to 20 data points on a citizen in the UK, and those data aren't connected. And if you compare that to say, the the big internet providers, the Googles, what have you, of the world, they hold 50 to 60 data points on any citizen at any one time, and they can use that data more effectively. But that doesn't sort of gel well with sort of our public services right now. So, NHS, Department of Work and Pensions, as an example, council tax, sort of parking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's there's a complete distinction, or there's a complete gap between how that data has been used at the moment. So again, to answer your question, wearables was quite an interesting thing. That sort of works quite well in China, where preventative outcomes are sort of more akin towards actually sort of, fixing emergencies all the time.
Awesome. Well, that's incredibly powerful. So, on the flip side, how can this same data approach, the data driven approach, accidentally lead to exclusions? What's an example of a well intentional city, smart city project that ended up leaving a segment of the population behind?
Good question. That's a very good question. So I can't think of any examples of that sort of straight away. Um, but we're aware, we see this all the time, that people are being left behind. The elderly are left
Yeah.
behind. Sort of vulnerable sort of children in care seem to be left behind quite a lot right now. So it gets back to the call it the smart cities, or the data-driven decisions um, are kind of not working very well for those. So in other words,
Yeah.
those are excluded from those sort of patterns of data or pattern analysis. Again, we see this quite a lot. Living in you know, I have the benefits, if you like, of sort of seeing things firsthand from it. Living in a sort of a large metropolitan city with diverse needs, diverse sort of challenges, and for sure, those communities are certainly excluded from data, or making those better data driven decisions.
I think what you've said is really telling because usually when the data set is biased, or if you only measure what's easy to measure, your smart decision will just be a faster way to create an unfair outcome
Yeah,
because you've missed out on, you know, aspects of the society that should be considered in that algorithm.
yeah, yeah,
And it highlights the need for a robust governance framework before you
yeah.
even begin.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah, and this is it, and it's a bit of Wild West right now. I feel, so everybody's trying to get to an outcome without any framework, as you
Yeah.
said, governance, and that worries you a little bit in terms of how that data is going to be used and sort of fall into the wrong hands. We see this already with to a point. We see this with sort of big data providers right now, and how that
Yeah.
data is being used. And as citizens, we kind of accept that because a lot of that data is being used for commercial reasons, and there's a monetization, and that's
Yeah.
to a point. Again, as citizens, we sort of accept that. However, when we're talking about those stakeholders from a citizen perspective, where municipalities, local authorities have a duty of care, that
Yeah.
that that governance needs to be very different to what's allowed in the commercial arena. This is my view.
Yeah. I agree. Totally. You know, it takes me back to the whole conversation around the people element of things
Yeah,
when it comes to smart city.
yeah,
How do you ensure this human element is at the center of the design process? And how do you get real community feedback and not just data points? Because we're looking
yeah,
at the quantitative and the qualitative data. How do we get all this together into, that design process?
yeah. That's half. That's surely a battle. Because when you think of getting data together, you think of sort of pulse surveys, or pulsive, and that's to a point. That's not is that really the right way of doing things now in the in 2026 and beyond. So the emotions, the sentiments have to be. It's a good question. I don't know, to be honest with you, but there's a challenge. There is a challenge there, and
Yeah.
that's probably going to be out there for the data scientists to understand this. So do you wait for? Do you gather the information by sentiments? Does the information come from dissatisfaction? I don't know what this looks like really, because yeah, that's is a challenging question. I've sat on a few things now. We sort of had a recent sort of seminar with the police recently, and they're trying to use agents, for instance, to sort of
Yeah.
deal with let's say sort of crime or sort of crime predictions. But that's at the start of the event. But there's nothing to sort of go back and sort of say what's the feedback? How do you improve this? And it's a good question. I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a good question for us as a society to be thinking about, especially for us, those in the technology field
Yep.
who are leading the technology that would impact our society. And again, it's about supplementing the quantitative data with qualitative human stories. And it's also a reminder that the data, tells you the what of a situation, but you need to talk to people to understand the why.
Yep.
And that information is really important to ensure that your story is complete. And it's also a lesson that applies to any industry, not just city planning.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, ultimately, when you boil back human sentiments, does it really change that much, really? Because people, we want, in terms of citizens, if you like, or consumers, you're after the same thing. You're after, you're after a good product, service, call it
Yeah,
what you want, at the right price, delivered efficiently, and delivered effectively. So ultimately, when it boils down to that, it's that's kind of the core of any of these decisions, in it, or the core of what a citizen or a consumer needs are. So it shouldn't be too difficult, really, to sort of differentiate between a consumer and a citizen, because ultimately it's the same person, but it's
yeah,
just really different hat.
absolutely. Wow. Okay. So, Harpal, a couple of weeks ago when we spoke, I remember you
Yep.
shared a chilling story with me about an AI savvy person scamming a vulnerable woman, which is very sad.
Yeah, yeah,
And it highlights the new risk that we all face.
yeah.
As we've built AI into the fabric of our cities, what is the single biggest security or safeguarding challenge we need to address?
Single piece or multiple pieces?
I'm happy for you to give me more.
It's the whole thing of bad actors, and that's always going to be there, isn't it?
Yeah,
The whole thing is, how does, let's say, how does, again, putting aside AI, sort of, if you go back through sort of, back to medieval times and all the way through, how do people get duped? How do people get scammed? Call it what you want. It's basically because it's acting on sort of you know, acting on, it's all acting on emotions.
yeah,
So when people act on emotions, people act on, when it's emotions, a call to action at a timely sort of event, if you like.
yeah,
Or the other thing is, the classic thing is, if it's too good to be true. It's it's no different to what's always happened. All you do now is using an AI agent to do that
yeah,
quicker, more sort of, more, you're doing it quicker. There's more of sort of, sort of personalization, if you like, that was ever there before. So that's no different. So how do we sort of protect people? How do we get sort of better at that? That's got to be education. I can't think of
yeah.
any other way right now. And sort of, if just double check it. And I think it'll get harder and harder. You know, you see these AIs now, the whole thing's around. We've seen what's happening in Grok right now, for instance. It's been used for interesting things, let's say.
Yeah,
But if that's, and that, it's things that's only going to get more and more now, isn't it? It's only going to get more and more
yeah.
convincing, isn't it? And, you know, is it really me that you're talking to right now? Am I really talking to you right now? I don't know. But this is it. So
That's a
this
good
holograph
one.
it's, it's, yeah, it's, you know, I would sort of say, I think we all have to accept that at some point we are, as even as you and I sit here, as technical savvy we are, as worldly wise as we are also vulnerable to these threats as well. That's just the way it is.
Absolutely. It is a reality that we need to face, that those who are on the other side are also getting equally tech savvy and
Yeah,
smarter in how
yeah,
they
yes,
address
yeah,
or continue to extort from the innocent. And this story is so important because it makes the risk personal and real.
yeah,
It could be you, it could be me, it
yeah,
could be
absolutely.
anyone. It's not an abstract data breach. It's actually a human being
Yeah.
getting hurt.
Well, exactly. It's like, you can protect yourself from the risks, for instance. So, you will lock your door at your home at night, for instance, or during the day. You will, I don't know, Just be careful of your surroundings as you walk through the streets. You will, do all the things you should be doing.
Yeah.
Lock your car and all these things because you know those risks. You know what those risks are. There's risk patterns. There's these things that happened before. So you could not so much to you, but society. These things happen in society. So on that basis, you could protect yourself against what you know, what you can see. But when you're up against things that you can't see and also don't exist right now, how do you get better at that?
Yeah, that's so true. And it proves that our responsibility does not end with deploying the technology. We
Yeah.
also have to manage its societal impact.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. And that was never, if you like, if I go back to the early days of my career, that was never really a consideration because you think of technology, what technology will do. Technology is there to build efficiencies, and it still is to build efficiencies. That's why you do it, so you can do things what you've always done better, quicker than ever before. But actually, technology has moved on from efficiencies now to actually performing tasks that probably weren't performed before. So, in other
Yeah,
words, what you did before is, you took a repeatable pattern and you done this quicker and more effectively. It you can take on more than that now. It can actually do things that weren't done before. That was never within your gift. Make decisions for you that you weren't making for argument's sake. So that's all good. That's all kind of what we want because human inertia is we always evolve. We always get better at things. If you go back to sort of our ancestors, if you like, but again, you're up against things that we don't know right now. That's the
no,
scary life we live in. Scary,
it's
challenging,
so true.
exciting, all those things.
That's true. And this brings us to governance.
Yeah,
You mentioned the need for safeguarding of AI agents and
yeah,
a whole customer care to manage them.
yeah.
What does a good governance framework for a city's AI systems look like? Who is accountable when an AI system causes harm?
Yeah, and that's a good question. And this is where, in terms of who is accountable, I think this is only going to work where you've got the municipality or the city at the central things, because in theory that they are sort of responsible or accountable to their stakeholders. So the AI governance has to be citizen first. And that's not, yeah, I mean, you would argue that's no different to a point. That's not where governance should be consumer first as well. But citizens have their own challenges. Whereas a consumer, you have a choice to consume services or goods. Whereas a citizen, uh, you kind of have a choice, but you also have a sort of, you have a, trying to think of the right word, but you have a requirement, you have a need. Healthcare services isn't the same as sort of, orders of Amazon, for instance. So that's it's very different, and it's also going to be
Yeah.
it's the driver for it, or the consumption of the goods or services from your local authority tends to be sort of reactive as opposed to proactive. So unfortunately, neither of us have the opportunity to sort of decide on when we're going to be ill, unfortunately. So it's a very different sort of and also panic or the whole distress puts you in a very vulnerable position
Yeah.
even ever than before. So it is an interesting sort of point, but again, it goes back to the municipalities or the cities have to take some responsibility, and I don't think we see that much right now.
It's a crucial point about accountability because
Yeah,
it's not enough to say the algorithm did it.
yeah,
You can't blame the algorithm when
yeah,
it comes to the impact, the social impact, if something goes really wrong when it
yeah.
comes to AI systems,
Yeah.
smart
Well,
cities.
look, I mean, if you think of the C-suites within local authorities or yeah, local authorities, municipalities, actually from a C-suite perspective, you don't really or very rarely get a position of a CIO, and you've got a CTO sort of trying to cover a CIO perspective, and that's really sort of data management. But again, there's no governance around that, how the data is going to be used. So actually, that there's a complete layer missing there.
Yeah. And I agree, there has to be a clear line of human
Yeah,
responsibility.
yeah,
And it's why we advocate for an intentional governance framework. At Anaya Group, we have to design the accountability structure with the same care you design the technical architecture.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, exactly. And again, from the consumer's perspective, you could argue is very different because consumers have a choice. But
Yes,
there's a question, there's a very blurred line right now, I think, in terms of consumer choice. But that's a different thing. That citizens are very, very different to consumers.
absolutely. So, to bring it all together, what is the one principle you would urge every city leader to adopt to ensure their smart city journey is also an inclusive city journey?
Yeah, I would have to pause on that question right now because I don't think I've kind of, so I've got the problem statements, or we know what the problem statements are, but we don't really have all the solutions. So we're still trying to work those out. But it has to be, yeah, it's a tough one because I also understand the challenges because there isn't one citizen. There is the avatars of
Yeah,
citizens are very varied. So these avatars of the citizen varies from city to city, and unfortunately, so there isn't a sort of a carte blanche that you can put across all cities. But it's getting those avatars together first, understanding what those avatars are. There cannot be that many avatars per city, and building framework across those avatars. So I talk about that in terms of sort of children, vulnerable children, adults, vulnerable adults. So those are the spectrums. But in that, there's varies as well in terms of what those avatars are, and sort of trying to build a framework around those avatars, I think, is probably the way.
yeah.
It's a starting point. You may, I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are. Would you agree, disagree? Just
I
from your,
completely agree with you. I think the conversation needs to be brought to the people at the right table and ensuring that there is a governance framework that ensures a continuous review
yeah,
of whatever was used to define the design process
yeah,
with it for any AI system,
yeah,
because you don't know what you've missed until you've given yourself a chance to review again with fresh pair of eyes.
yeah,
And that governance framework needs to be a living governance framework. It
yeah,
should be
yeah.
one that keeps being reviewed.
I think, but when you so when I answer that question, I sort of or tried to answer that question. I don't think I answered it very well. But then, how do you get into those the call it the avatars or the stakeholders? Because your window into to municipalities tends to be through governing authorities,
Yeah.
councillors, MPs, and there's biases already, depending on sort of without getting political. So is that framework outdated, or is that framework not fit for purpose when it comes to sort of AI? I think there
Yes.
is a question to be answered there. Um, so yeah, so we need, the window in probably isn't the traditional sort of councillors or MPs. It probably is something different.
Yes, exactly.
I think so. I think that's the answer. Sorry, I think I'm clear on that because
Yeah.
just normal council or normal governing isn't going to give us what we need.
No, absolutely. And even on that note, you could argue whether that governance framework is even existing in the first
Yeah,
place.
a big time. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Um,
No, I agree. It doesn't exist right now because there isn't anybody to take the data up to or ask the question. Or sorry, push down if you like. If you think of the push down perspective, the framework, if you like, there isn't any sort of if I take the research we've been doing right now, for argument's sake, across UK local authorities, we have, I think we counted, and again, it differs from city to city, but sorry, different types of authorities in terms of the size and makeup of the cities, not city to city. Sorry, I got that wrong. But there's anything between 14 to 18 data points of a citizen. So, and I haven't got all of them, but if you think of, you pay your council taxes, you may get DWP payments, you may have social needs, you have health needs as citizens, we all do. We have our sort of refuse collected, which pretty much is all of us, depending on which, even that's controversial right now. So by the end of that, you're up to 14 to 18 data points. And if I take the UK for argument's sake, we are moving towards devolution now, which you'll see more and more services delivered by the authority. So police services, ambulance, health is going to be more and more sort of, even sort of general sort of practice of health. Then actually the data points sort of increase more and more, but then they're distinct data points. So when you've got discrete data points, you have no sort of, let's say, sort of data framework or AI framework or a CIO, even let's go with the CIO, Chief Information Officer framework. How do you bring that data together? How do you make any sense of that data? And how
yeah.
do you start to draw parallels from that data to do those data-driven decisions?
Harpal, this is the perfect principle to end on.
Yeah.
really good advice, and one that should be taken away, and we can do more to help our cities to become, I would say, much more equipped to support the society. So thank you for bringing such a necessary and human-centered perspective to this important topic.
Thank you.
What a vital conversation with Harpal. My key takeaway, amongst many, is that a city does not become smart just by adding technology. It becomes smart when it uses that technology to become more inclusive, more equitable, and more responsive to the needs of all its citizens. The human impact is the only metric that truly matters. So to connect with Harpal, please visit the links in our show notes. And if you are a leader working to build your own intentional data-driven strategy, you can learn more about our frameworks at Anaya Group by visiting anaya.org. Until next time, keep leading intentionally. Thank you.
Thank you.